Hello people, this is Self-Tuts and we are starting a new series on Docker, that is Docker for Beginners. In this series, we'll be learning about the important concepts of Docker, and it will help you to understand what is Docker, why it is needed, what are the basic commands of Docker, and how you can use Docker in your projects. So let's start with this series, and in the first video, we'll be learning about why do we need Docker. So whenever I learn new technologies, the first thing that I try to understand is what is the need for that technology. So in this video, we'll be learning that why Docker is needed, what problem it solves, and how it can help you in your projects. So let's understand Docker related to application development problem without Docker. Let's say Docker is not present in the market and you are doing an application development, then what problems do you face? So let's take a scenario of running a Node.js application that we downloaded from GitHub. So generally what we do, we go to an open source project or we host our own projects on GitHub, and then generally people download it from there, or you also download other people's application from GitHub and then run on your local machine. So let's say this is GitHub, and on this GitHub we have a Node.js application, and this application was developed using Node.js 10. So we have different versions of Node.js which started from, let's say, version 1, and currently we have reached up to a version of Node.js 15 or Node.js 18, and let's say this particular application was developed using Node.js 10. We have a local machine, let's say Windows machine, where Windows operating system is installed. Other people can have a MacBook where they have a Mac machine, so OS X is installed, and other people can have Ubuntu machine where Linux distribution, let's say Ubuntu, is installed. Now if you try to deploy this application on your local machine, if you try to run this application on your local machine, so what you do, you basically use the clone command. So the clone command does what? It takes the application source code from the GitHub and downloads it on your local machine. And here the catch is, let's say currently my machine is Windows machine and Node.js 8 version is installed there. So here this application was developed using Node.js 10, but here I am having a Node.js 8 version. So since there is a version difference and this is a lower version, so there can be some of the features which was used in Node.js 10 or which has been developed in Node.js 10 is not available in Node.js 8, so your machine can face problem. So either you need to upgrade your Node.js version or you need to downgrade the dependencies. So there is a mismatch, like the application is not going to run correctly in your local machine. Let's take the example of Mac machine. Here Node.js 5, lower version than Node.js 8 is installed, so this will face more issues. So someone developed it using Node.js 10, but your local has Node.js 5, so you can face some problem while running this application. Let's take the case of Ubuntu. Here Node.js 13. So 13 version is more than Node.js 10 version. So there can be some features which is deprecated in Node.js 13, and let's say that particular feature is being used in the application which was hosted here on GitHub. So again you can face problem. So if you can see this scenario, and this is a common scenario with all the languages, either Python, either C++. So every time we get upgrade on the languages and you install that particular version of the language on your local machine and then you run the application. So the problem that can be faced here was issues faced different OS, so issue in dependency installation. So when you build an application, so you have certain dependencies. So let's say you are developing a REST API application, so you have a dependency of Express.js on Node.js. Suppose you are building a WordPress application, so you will have dependency on PHP modules, let's say MySQL module, or let's say image resizer thing is there in the application, so you will need some dependencies related to that. So if the operating system is different, so there can be some dependency installation issues on your local machine. Headache of maintaining different version of Node.js on your local machine. So one solution is what? Let's say I'm saying that okay, this application is developed using Node.js 10 and you have different versions of Node.js on your machine. So you can use a version manager where you can have different versions of the same Node.js. Let's say you can install Node.js 8 also, Node.js 10 also, Node.js 15 also, and based on the application that you have downloaded, you can change your version using that application, version manager application, and then you can use it. So Node.js has a version manager that is called as NVM, and people generally use it, but that is also a headache, because when you will try to use a different application which has Node.js 5, so again you have to change the default version of Node.js on your local machine and then try to use it. So this is a constant headache and you don't need to face it. The third is library issues because of different operating system. So let's say this Node.js 10 application was developed on Ubuntu, and then you downloaded this application and cloned it on Windows machine. So there can be some issues related to Node GYP, which basically uses the operating system libraries to build some of the object files of C. Okay, so that is the details of Node.js. So this can happen for different languages, like there can be a library issues because the applications are being used in different operating systems. So these are the different issues that you can face during your development, and Docker helps you to solve it. Like this will be application which is developed in Node.js 10, and when you download it, so you build a Docker environment to develop this application, and it will encapsulate that particular application in a boundary of Docker, which will provide a constant operating system irrespective of your host machine operating system. So we will learn the details of that, but this is one problem that we as developers generally face when we are trying to develop an application without Docker. Okay, let's take another example of application deployment problem without Docker. So let's say there is no Docker in the market, there is nothing like this, and you are trying to deploy a application, and what problem you will face. Let's understand that. So in this scenario also, let's say that we are will be running a Node.js application that we downloaded from GitHub. So this time what we will do, we have a Amazon EC2 instance, and that is basically Ubuntu 20. So there is a EC2 machine, that is, let's say it is a physical machine available on the cloud, and it has Ubuntu 20 installed there. And now let's say there is a Windows machine which, let's say, I am using, there is a Mac machine which you are using, and there is some third developer who is using the Ubuntu machine. So he can develop the application on Node.js 8 on the Windows machine, and then try to push that application to this remote environment where he is publicly hosting his application and other peoples can use. Same way for Mac machine, again, let's say you are the developer and you are developing it in Node.js 5, and then you are publishing it here, but Ubuntu 20 machine which is present on EC2 can have a Node.js 10 version installed there. So again, there is a difference in the Node.js versions, and this can create a problem. Let's say for Ubuntu machine, there is a scenario that it is Node.js 13. So it has a greater version than the version which is installed on the remote Amazon EC2 machine. So this will also create problems, because there can be a dependency resolution issue. There can be operating system based library building issues. So there are n number of issues because there is a difference in the operating system. But what Docker does, Docker encapsulates your application. It provides its own operating system. It provides its own libraries, which is host machine agnostic. So you can have Mac machine, you can have Windows machine, you can have Ubuntu machine, but your application will be encapsulated inside the Docker environment, and it will run without any issues. We'll see that in later videos, that how Docker solves that issue. Okay, so these are the two main problems that I have also faced during my software development journey, and Docker helps you to solve this particular problem in a very good way. So why do we need Docker? So I've given you two examples. There can be n number of other examples, but these are the two basic examples through which you can understand the importance of Docker. Like, you have any host operating system, either Windows, either Mac, either Ubuntu, but you don't need to do any changes on your source code, any changes on your dependent libraries to deploy it to a certain Amazon EC2, or let's say GCP server, Google Cloud server, or on your local machine if you have Docker. So we will understand this magic in our later videos. So Hope you understand the concept that why do we need Docker and what is the significance of Docker in today's software development environment. So hope you like this video, hope you like my channel. Please share these videos and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.